Hello, I'm Susan Craighead with the League of Women Voters of Naperville. Thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight, we will be talking about the process of ranked choice voting and the potential benefits, as well as current efforts in Illinois. Rebecca Williams lives in Willowbrook, Illinois, and gets to work full-time on voting reform as the statewide organizer for FairVote Illinois. She started working in political organizing in 2017 and ran the successful ranked choice voting campaign for Evanston last fall, making them the first municipality in Illinois to adopt ranked choice voting. She has a passion for working on nonpartisan policy that brings systemic change. I'll ask you to please put your questions in the chat, although we will have a question and answer period at the end. Rebecca?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I am going to run through a presentation which should give a pretty good briefing on ranked choice voting and the various ways that we can use it. And there should be a lot of time at the end for Q&A. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. Okay, I assume we're good to go. So, I'm with FairVote Illinois, and we believe that voting needs an upgrade. Sad truth of America today is our country is too polarized, and our politics are broken. And I'm saying this, but you have probably felt this way. And if you have, just know that you are not alone. Poll after poll shows that the vast majority of Americans are saying the government is not working the way it should be. It's not being responsive to the people. It's not addressing our biggest concerns in society. And you can see here that public trust in the government is near historic lows. This has, and we have become a divided nation. And as a great Illinoisan once said, a nation divided against itself cannot stand. So what's important to know about this fairly toxic, broken state that our politics has gotten to is that the way we vote really drives a lot of this division. And that way of voting that I'm referring to is plurality voting, or sometimes called first past the post. So what a lot of people don't think about or don't necessarily know with the way we're currently voting is that you do not need majority support in order to win. So by majority support, we need 50% or more. Now, if you're voting in at-large elections, like you're voting for your city council members and you're electing several, that's a slightly different thing, and I'll get into that. But when we're talking about, say, voting for the president or your member of Congress or your state representative, your mayor, any of those positions, they can win with less than 50%. So for the voter, that makes us have to strategize and think about things like, does my candidate even have a chance of winning? Am I going to be wasting my vote if I vote for this person? I really like their politics, but, are they viable? And from the candidate side, they start thinking about things like, what's the least number of voters I need to win? Because no longer do they need support from a majority of the community. They just need to figure out how many people they're running against and that least number. And a really effective way to operate within campaigns right now with this plurality voting is making the other candidates into villains. They're saying, you know, even if I'm not the best, they're really, really horrible. So you need to vote for me. And a lot of times, because of the way we're voting and the way we're having to vote strategically, we only kind of have two viable choices. And again, we get this really bleak, nasty campaigning. Everyone is just painting the other as immoral and dishonest and dangerous. And none of us like that. And we're not actually getting the issues of our communities addressed. So to illustrate this point about how plurality voting works and people can win with a lot less than 50%, I want to point to actually primary elections as an example, because in Illinois in particular, the vast majority of our districts are not competitive districts. They're either firmly red or firmly blue. So the real contest is in the primary. And once someone gets out of that, they're basically guaranteed to win in the general. But a lot of times with primaries, you get splits like this, where there's 5 people running and the person wins out of it with 27%. So not only are you getting a much smaller field of voters who are voting in the primary, but you aren't even getting majority support for these candidates. And I'm not saying anything bad about any of these candidate examples I'm giving. I'm just using them to illustrate this issue that we see. We see it also with the Republican here. So this gentleman, Paul Jacobs, he won his primary with just 33%. So this is showing that in both of these cases, the vast majority of voters voted for someone else, and we don't know if they even like these people who emerge victorious from the primary. And even when we have nonpartisan elections, because I just gave partisan examples there, those don't really help either. In Chicago, they actually do require majority support for their candidates to win, whether it's alderman or mayor. But what they do is they force a runoff if you can't get that majority support in the first round. So in 2019, they had a 14 candidate field. There's no way anyone's getting a majority with that. So we had these 2 candidates who advanced to the runoff with less than 35% of the vote among the 2 of them. And there's also the spoiler effect that happens with the way when we do not require majorities for candidates to win. So this is a pretty example, but it's a very well-known one where there's not much vote difference here, and Nader pulled a lot of votes away, and a lot of people would refer to this and say, oh, how horrible that those people voted for Nader. But we would say people should be free to express their true preference, and they should be able to do that without worrying that they're spoiling the election. And with ranked choice voting, I'll show how you can do that. So the way this is working, this is not democracy. We must do better. And with ranked choice voting, we have that better way. And I do want to also preface this before I go into how this works, that ranked choice voting is already being used in a lot of places nationwide. It's being used in a little over 50 jurisdictions, including the entire states of Alaska and Maine for all their federal and statewide elections. And it's used in a lot of cities. It's going to start being used in Evanston, Illinois here in April 2025. So this is something that has been tested in a lot of places, and it's working very well. So how does ranked choice voting work? Well, it doesn't just consider your first choice. It also allows voters to put down their second, third, fourth choice, so on. It never forces you to rank multiple choices, but it's allowing you to express support for multiple candidates if you really do support multiple candidates in an election. So the way this works is, again, keeping in mind when we're dealing with single winners like a mayor or a member of Congress or the president or anything like that, we need to get to that majority, that 50% plus one. So here, all of these characters, they're running for mayor of Toontown, right? So if this was running just like a normal election, Daffy Duck would be the winner with just 38%. But in a ranked choice voting election, that's not good enough. Someone needs to get to over 50%. So how do we figure that out? Well, we already had everyone rank their preferences on their ballot when they came to the ballot box. So we eliminate the candidate who had the least votes because there's no way they're going to win. And we redistribute their second choice votes. So we can see Wile E. Coyote, he was eliminated, and that kind of distributed somewhat evenly across the field. We look at it, still no one has 50%, so we repeat this process. So now we've eliminated Sylvester, redistributed those second choice votes. Now we're seeing that Bugs Bunny is actually gaining. He has overtaken Daffy Duck. But still no one has that 50%. So we have to go through this again. And this time we'll eliminate Roadrunner. And now Bugs Bunny emerges triumphant. Now, this result actually isn't super common. Usually the candidate who has the most first choice votes, they ultimately have enough support to get them over that 50% hurdle. However, when you have an election result like this, what it shows is that initial person with that stronger support, they kind of tapped it out within the community. Bugs Bunny was ultimately good at reaching out to the majority of the community, even if he wasn't everyone's first choice. So, just rehash of the benefits of this. You no longer have to worry about vote splitting with ranked choice voting. So if you have several similar candidates, maybe you have 3 women who are running and they're pretty ideologically similar and you think they're all pretty great. In our current system, what would probably happen is they would probably all split the vote and none of them would win. A totally different candidate would win. With ranked choice voting, if they're doing a good job of getting out their message in the community and they're popular, you can just rank all of them and then one of them would end up winning. And with ranked choice voting, you're really getting to vote for a candidate, not against. So you're not just thinking about, oh my gosh, is it going to be awful if this person wins? I guess I need to vote for so-and-so because I think that they can beat them. You can express your truest preference. No runoffs are needed if you're in a place that's currently doing those. Not a lot of places in Illinois do that currently, but I know we've all seen how that happens in Georgia every 2 years, and it's really frustrating, and the whole nation has to wait for the results. So there are a lot of places that are doing them, and of course, Chicago does them, and it's not great, costs the city a lot of money. So this is why this is also sometimes called instant runoff voting. And then the last thing, which I think is really great, is it encourages more civil campaigning, because now instead of candidates, just trying to be the one that emerges victorious, they are aware that you have second, third choices and everything. So it's not going to benefit them if they're speaking negatively about their fellow candidates. So I just explained how ranked choice voting works if you are looking to elect one person. Again, if you're doing it for a mayor, if you're doing it for president, congressman, any type of position like that. But I'm aware that I'm talking to a group that lives in Naperville, and you might be thinking, okay, but we are in Naperville, and last I checked, when we vote for our city council members, we already have 4 choices. So aren't we good? Like, would ranked choice voting be doing anything here? And the answer to that is yes. Ranked choice voting can also be really powerful with at-large elections, which is kind of how those are referred to. And the reason for that is it's still making candidates hit a proportional threshold. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through this. And again, I know this is kind of a lot of information I'm giving to people at once, but there will be lots of times at the end for questions. So in this example, we've got the characters from The Simpsons, and they're running for city council. So again, you have your ballot and you can rank as many as you want. So this person here, they chose to rank 5 of the candidates. So there's one candidate, it looks like I can't remember his name. I haven't watched The Simpsons in forever. But there's one candidate. They didn't rank it all. They don't like him, but the rest, they're like, yeah, okay, I could be okay with these people. So here's how the breakdown for that works. Now, in an election where there are 3 people getting elected at once, you would need, to keep it proportional, we need to make sure the candidates have at least 25% to win. And that's, again, this is basically just making sure they have as much broad support from the community as possible. But of course, you aren't requiring 50% because there's multiple people getting elected. So 25% is the number that works here. So when we count up the first place votes, Lisa, she was a shoo-in. She's Lisa, right? Everyone was like, of course we want her for the city council. So Lisa actually got a lot more votes than needed to win. And then no one else has reached that 25% threshold yet. So here's how it shakes out with proportional. We actually redistribute those excess votes, similar to how we would redistribute the votes when people were eliminated, if they weren't viable to win. We redistribute them in this case because the whole thing with ranked choice voting is we don't want voters feeling like they're having to vote strategically. So we wouldn't want anyone saying, you know what, Lisa's a lock, I don't actually have to vote for her. We want people voting for her. If she's good, we want people to vote. But they don't have to feel like their vote was wasted because these excess ones are going to be redistributed. So we do that. They go and redistribute accordingly. And now we see that still no one was at the threshold. So at that point, that's where we go into eliminating people. We redistribute second or third choices. And we do that again until 3 people get to the threshold. So with this, it is just a way of doing it that, again, is making sure that the people who are winning these multiple seats still have broad support within the community. And I wanted to share a slide that is, showing Naperville's actual council breakdown and the recent election results. And to be clear, I'm not passing judgment on any of these candidates or anything. I don't know anyone here. But this is, so with the way it works for Naperville's system, if they were using RCV, people would need to be hitting that 20%. It wouldn't be 25, it would be 20, since it was 4 of them. But you can see for the people that won, they were well under that. And the reason for that is because so many candidates were running in this election. And with the way our politics currently works, this often causes a lot of infighting with parties. It causes a lot of people saying, you're going to split the vote, you're going to be a spoiler, you need to wait your turn. And this is the type of stuff that we are looking to eliminate. It should be a good thing if there's a lot of people getting engaged with politics in their community. It should be a good thing if we're being presented with a lot of diverse ideas and people wanting to be civil servants. But with the way our voting is set up, it discourages that. And so with ranked choice voting, again, the vote splitting, not a problem. Spoiler effect, it goes away. So you don't get that. And people with similar ideas, it's going to coalesce and one of them will emerge victorious. And then the community is just able to feel as if they have people who are elected who truly represent the majority of them well. So you might say, okay, this is kind of a crazy idea you just introduced me to, if you hadn't heard of it before. But does it actually work in practice? Again, going back to the slide I showed you with the map of the United States, yes, it absolutely does. We have a lot of data from the places that are already using it. And speaking to the point about campaigns being more civil, we can see in data from the 2021 election, a lot of people, of course, said, oh, I think the election tone was about the same. But for the people who felt a difference, it was overwhelmingly more positive. And we actually had the privilege of speaking with a council member who was elected for the first time in the 2021 election. And she spoke about how she specifically worked to keep her campaign really positive, really civil, and some of the people running against her did not do the same. And she was one of those candidates who didn't have the most votes in that very first round, but she ultimately won because she was really great about reaching out to her community and not attacking others. And then the other question, of course, is like, so after I just went through all of that, I might have made it sound like it was maybe a little more complicated than it actually is. But what we find is ranked choice is rather easy for voters to understand. Because if you think about it, when you're going into the ballot box and just saying, just rank your candidates in order of preference, you know, people aren't having to think about how does this get tabulated and everything. They just do that. And of course, voters are told beforehand, you're going to have the ability to rank multiple candidates. So that just encourages people to, you know, really learn about the people who are running, and they go in just prepared to have more voice and more choice in their election. But yeah, this like 95% number, 86%, 90%, we see numbers like that time after time again, in terms of asking people, did you understand it? Was it simple to use? So that's ranked choice voting. And I am with the group FairVote Illinois. I also have a wonderful volunteer, Imad, on this call with me. He'll be dropping a couple of links throughout if there's ways that you want to get engaged with our group, if you just want to sign up, be on our list and see what's happening. If you want to donate and anything like that, he'll drop a couple links for you. But we are the group that's really working on spreading ranked choice voting throughout Illinois. So we do a lot of education work, like on this call. And we're also working to bring it to cities and also ultimately to the federal and statewide level. So we had our first victory in Evanston. They voted 82% yes to adopt it for their local elections. So that was a great victory. And now we're absolutely open to bringing it to other cities. The main things we look for are pretty much local groups in the area that say they want it, because we don't want to just be coming in and saying, hey, you should get this for your city. We want, people in the area to express that this is something they think would be good. And also we just take a look at the elections and see if it could help. And, looking at the most recent one for Naperville, that was definitely one where we saw that it could make a difference. So there, and you might be wondering, how can we get it for cities in Illinois? It's a pretty simple process. Either the city council can decide to put a binding referendum on the ballot, or we can have a citizen petition that puts a binding referendum on the ballot. And then the people vote for the referendum, that just like they did in Evanston. And then if they vote yes, then a better way of voting will begin at the nearest convenient election. So definitely making sure the first election where it's implemented is far enough out that there's time to do voter education, make any switches to equipment if needed, all of that good stuff. So if you are thinking, this sounds great, I'd love to help with this, or I just want to, stay a little more informed on what's happening, you can always join our mailing list. Emad will be dropping that link. He might also share one directly to our DuPage County chapter if you want to see like what events are happening in the area. We're regularly canvassing, doing stuff like that. And yes, speaking to that, if you want to get really involved, you can always check when you sign up that you want to volunteer, and then we'll reach out to you about that. If you just kind of want to keep it low key, see what we're doing, you can follow us on the social media at FairVote Illinois. We're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, even TikTok. And we love doing presentations like this, getting to speak to organizations, community groups, senior citizen centers, all sorts of things. So if you are here today and you thought this is really cool, I'd like more people to know about this, and a group you can get us involved with, then yeah, please reach out and let us know. We love talking to more people. And if you are so inclined, you can always donate too. It costs a lot of money for us to continue to spread the word across Illinois. And certainly as we get more campaigns, that does. So that is always a way to help. So that is the presentation. I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And now I am open for questions, and I see quite a few things in the chat here. I think I can just go through it at this point, if that's okay, Susan.
That sounds great.
Okay. So yeah, thank you everyone for sticking with me through that. So do our county election divisions have any say when a community opts for ranked choice voting? So no, the county doesn't have any. So yeah, basically, as long as a municipality is home rule, which most municipalities in Illinois are, there are a few that aren't, but Naperville is one that is home rule. They are allowed to change the way they do elections by binding referendum. The county clerk might, they might be a little annoyed. They might say, oh, this is more work, or now I have to get the software upgrade or something like that. But they have made the deal to run the elections for municipalities, and municipalities get to decide how they do their elections. So yeah, they can't control that. And then another question here is, what are the issues faced by election equipment? So that is really dependent upon where we're talking about in Illinois. We have a super decentralized way of doing our elections here. Our counties, pretty much they all use different equipment, and some is really newer, up-to-date equipment. Others is equipment that would not be ranked choice voting ready at all. So we actually, so I'll address this for Naperville's purposes. We actually, DuPage County recently switched to really great equipment. It would be really easy to use RCV for any municipalities within Naperville. I think they're actually all RCV, if I'm remembering correctly, or like it's a small software upgrade. So we're in a really good position where we are, but that's not the case for all counties across the state. So in terms of statewide work that we're trying to do, like if we wanted to see it for federal elections or presidential primaries or something like that, we actually have an RCV task force, like with members from the General Assembly and stuff like that appointed, that's starting soon. And they are going to be really just diving into the nitty-gritty of what it's going to take to make the state RCV ready, so that in the future, when the legislature is ready to pass a bill that would, allow it at some sort of statewide level, we're prepared for what we need to do there. And then let's see, what is involved in implanting ranked choice voting? So I think I mostly answered this of just, you have to get a binding voter referendum that, at least at the city level. For the statewide level, we have to go through the legislature. So basically, we've got to convince, by we, I mean, FairVote Illinois and, other groups throughout the state that are wanting this. Hopefully, as people get it in their municipalities, they say, this is really great. Why aren't I getting to use it for the presidential election? Why don't I get to use it to elect my state senator? Things like that. But that's going to be more of a long game of putting pressure on the legislature. And then let's see, in the council example, how do you determine which votes get redistributed for the candidate? Yes, that's an excellent question, Gail. So yeah, for the excess vote redistribution, it's a little bit, it can be a little bit tricky, but basically, the way that, so this is an old system of voting. Cambridge has been using it since like the 1940s. So they used it before we had sophisticated voter tabulation machines. Like all the votes were done by hand, right? So even with this proportional RCV vote system, it was done by hand. But what they did then to just kind of keep it fair with that excess vote redistribution is they would do those excess votes at random. So let's say the candidate got 200 more votes that they needed. They would pull 200 ballots at random and say, okay, what were the second choices of these 200 ballots? What we do now, because we have voting machines and we can break it down in a more fair way, is we redistribute the fraction of the vote that is excess. So let's say the candidate got, let's say the candidate needed 1,000 votes to win, and they got 1,500. So you have 500 extra votes, so that's 50% more than they need. So what we would do is we would redistribute like 0.5 second choice. So your vote for your second choice, you would do half a vote to your second choice. And that's how that goes. And that's how it goes on for all of them. I want to pause there and ask people, does that make sense? Or does it make enough sense? I do always say with ranked choice voting, especially with proportional, I kind of think of it as like, I don't need to know exactly how my car works. I just need to know it works well. I need to know the benefits of it to me. So yeah, so I think it's okay if you don't fully grasp it, but I do want to give people the ability to ask more questions on that part if they want.
Feel
Okay,
free
cool.
to unmute if you want to ask Rebecca
Yeah,
in more detail.
you don't have to, you don't have to keep it. Yeah. You don't have to keep everything in the chat
So what you're saying is that everybody's vote will count with the second choice, because you're gonna have because that was my concern when you described the process.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, before when we were just hand counting, it just kind of had to be random. That was the closest to fair that we had. But with this way, it's very fair where it's just a fraction of the vote. Like essentially, it's essentially whatever percentage that candidate doesn't need. So, they got 50% more than they need. Well, then we can redistribute that. So let's see, I think I'm looking at Teresa's question at the bottom here. So let's see. So how do you know which votes are in excess? So Teresa, I think I answered that question for you now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. That was my question with that one. There is the second one though, if you could look at that.
Yeah, I'll get to that here. Just want to make sure I don't miss other ones up higher. What are the problems with ranked choice voting, or what are those opposed to ranked choice voting advocate? So, I have not found any like legitimate problems with the system. The main thing I say is that ranked choice voting does ask a little bit more of the voter if you want to fully utilize it. Now, of course, you can just go in and you can just put one choice, and that's fine. Your vote is still going to count and everything. But if you want to really fully utilize having more of a voice, then you're, more encouraged to do a little more research on the candidates, or pay a little more attention to what's going on in that campaign cycle. And yeah, and for some people that might feel like a bit much, but I also think it's worth it to have a better democracy. I think it's worth it to make it so voters feel like their vote has more power. We always do, all sorts of exit polling and surveys afterward, especially in new places that are using ranked choice voting. And that was one of the things they asked Alaska voters in the most recent election where they used it for the first time, is did they feel like their vote mattered more? And a majority of voters said they felt like it did, which I think is really great. And I think that is how we start. That's how we increase voter turnout. And that's how we get more people to actually engage with the system. So it's asking more of people, but I think it's worth it. The other thing, of course, just from the logistical perspective, is some places do need to switch their equipment or just do like a software upgrade, and that costs some amount of money. And the county clerks have to do a different thing. So there's the logistics of switching to the system. And then there are, of course, people that are worried about the voter education aspect of it, just making sure that everyone is aware of the new system, aware of how it works, which groups like the one I work for and, you know, the groups we partner with and everything are very invested in making sure that goes well when it rolls out in new places, because we really think this is such a great reform to our democracy. We don't want it to go poorly just because we didn't do a good enough job explaining it. So that's a concern, but not like a problem with ranked choice voting, just something that we always have to be aware of. And let's see, so how do current politicians feel about RCV? It depends on the politician you ask. A lot of them, I think, don't have any sort of opinion on it yet because they haven't been pressed enough on it. But I will say a lot of them do have to be, the majority of them do have to be pressed to really fully support it. You'll get a lot of lukewarm support from from elected officials, but when it comes to saying like, okay, well, will you vote for this bill, or will you vote to put on the ballot or something, they really have to be pushed. And the reason for that is typically not because they're against it, not because they think it's going to be bad, but because people are hesitant to change the system that they got elected with. You know, if they got into power with a certain way of voting, then they think, well, I know how to do that now. I don't know, you're introducing a variable and I'm not sure if I'm going to be victorious with that. And the thing is, the data on RCV actually shows that the effect on incumbents is nominal. So it's not actually really a big thing that incumbents have to worry about, but it's still something that I understand they're hesitant about. Let's see. And yeah, again, if anyone wants to jump in, if you're like, okay, wait, I have a follow-up to that, feel free to interrupt me. I'm talking a lot, so. And then in the presidential example, oh yeah, so Maureen, this is a great question too. So in the presidential example, it has it would have some effect because it can change things on the statewide level. So you're correct that with the example I gave, that was of the popular vote. And obviously we don't elect our presidents off popular vote. However, the way that popular vote broke down within the states, it was enough to shift the electoral college to where, you know, Bush still won. And it was because within states enough votes were being given to Nader that, you know, within a state you can have a breakdown of like, I don't know, you could have 45% and 40% and then 15%. And all of the electoral college would still go to the candidate that got that 45. So that's where we could see small changes. And for Alaska and Maine, like they're going to be using ranked choice voting for the presidential election. So all of the electoral votes for Alaska and Maine will go to whoever gets that 50% or more. So in Alaska and Maine, it will actually be kind of interesting to see the percentages that like the Green Party candidate gets, or the independent candidate gets, or libertarian, like whoever our third party candidates in this presidential election are. That will be really interesting to look at for those states, because right now I feel like those votes are really being artificially suppressed because people don't want to waste them. They don't want to be spoilers. Cool. Okay, so let's see. With multiple candidate elections, one candidate exceeded. Okay, cool. So I answered that one. And then yes, so this question is really important, Therese, because we hear people say this a lot, and it's kind of a twisting of what's going on. So the question is, we've heard that if someone does not rank all candidates, the ballot is voided. Your presentation said otherwise. Are there different ways to set up the ranking? So, let's say there are like 5 candidates and you rank 3 of them, right? And your first choice is in last place. And so first choice is eliminated, and your second choice happens to be the next highest person, right? You just kind of like all the outlier candidates in this election. And so then it goes, your second choice goes to the next candidate. And then, well, they're the last place person again, still no one's got the majority. So they're eliminated. And then your third choice, it goes to the next person, but they're still in third place, and they're still, and there's 2 people ahead of them, right? We've got 5 candidates, and it's just kind of hopping up. But then this third choice that you voted for, they can't win, so they're eliminated. And then finally, we're left with the 2, and one of them emerges victorious, right? So in that case, your vote did not ultimately go to one of the winners. Now, with an example like that, that's where people are saying your ballot is getting voided. Your ballot is not getting voided. You are getting to express your voice, and you're getting to express more of a preference than you currently do in our elections. When we vote for someone right now in an election that doesn't win, we don't say our ballot is voided. For all the people who voted for anyone other than Brandon Johnson or Paul Vallis in the February election in Chicago, we didn't say their ballot is voided. We just said, well, those people voted for someone who didn't win. So with ranked choice voting, sometimes people are still going to vote for people who didn't win. But the mechanism of it is it's allowing you more chances to ultimately contribute a vote for the winner. So if someone only votes for one candidate and that candidate's votes get redistributed, what happens to that person's vote? So in that case, then your candidate just doesn't win. And if you just wanted to vote for that one candidate, you really didn't like anyone else and they don't win, it is what it is. But ranked choice voting is about like making it so you could vote for more if you wanted.
Rebecca, that was very helpful. Thank you. Let me push you even further. So will Maine and Alaska have the same procedures if Illinois were to get on board? Would it also follow those same guidelines?
Do you mean if Illinois were to get on board, like with our
ranked choice voting,
like with our federal and our statewide elections?
Yes.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like like the reason we have all these different statewide groups like working on ranked choice voting and kind of getting it slowly for the different states is because states get to choose how we run our elections, right? So they're still going to be doing ranked choice voting in those, and if Illinois chooses to add itself to the fold, I think that's really great. Does that answer it? Is that what you were asking?
Not exactly. For instance, how districts are designed is determined by a state legislature. So would the methodology for ranked choice voting be different depending upon how a state determined it wanted to set it up?
Wait, so are you asking something for like the presidential election results, or are
right
you
now it doesn't matter. I don't know the difference between.
So are you asking if there are different ways to set up ranked choice voting?
Yes, sorry, you simplified it. Thank you.
Oh, not really. I mean, there's the way of like proportional versus single winner, but that's just dependent on if you have a type of election where there's multiple winners. So when it comes to all of the statewide and federal offices, that's all single winner. So we're basically all operating the same way if we're getting ranked choice voting. Like there's different machines that can do it, but it would be extremely similar state to state.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's FairVote. It's a national group. Is that correct? And were you involved in Maine and Alaska? Was FairVote, or were other organizations active in making that happen?
Okay, so sorry, I should clarify. So FairVote is a national group. FairVote Illinois happens to be, we're just an independent statewide group though. We just, there are a few states that sort of license the name from them. There's also FairVote Minnesota and FairVote Washington, but we all operate independently. But FairVote is a national group that really helps they're less on the grassroots end. They certainly help with grassroots where they can, but they work very heavily on like the policy side, like crafting good policy and the research, like all the extensive amounts of data and research that has been collected showing RCV in practice. So much of that is due to FairVote's work. But yeah, so in terms of who really helped with the Alaska and Maine efforts, I personally wasn't involved in those, but I think those were mostly driven by statewide groups.
One person asked how ranked choice voting might work with judges. Would there be any difference?
So that's a great question. I actually don't know the answer for that. That no one has asked that before, and I'm surprised no one has asked that before. I sort of thought that with a lot of judges, it's that you either vote to retain or not. Am I wrong on that? Or is it that sometimes you're voting for new ones?
I think sometimes you're voting for new judges. That
okay,
somebody retires and you need a new judge. They're supposed to be nonpartisan, but they're not.
Yeah. So what I will. So judges are elected sometimes at the municipal level, right? Like sometimes.
No, they're elected at the county and the state level.
Okay.
So there's 3 tiers in Illinois.
Okay.
There's circuit appeal and Supreme Court.
I actually need to get back to you on that. Now I want to find this answer. I'll email you the answer, Susan, once I find it. But I'm really not sure if that's something that would apply. I know that there are some election bodies where we just don't have a mechanism for getting ranked choice voting in Illinois. Like there's not a legality thing for it, like for school boards, for example. A lot of times when we talk about getting it for municipalities, people ask if it would apply to school board elections, and it would not, because they are not covered under the home rule purview. So for things like that, I have an answer for, but I haven't thought of the judges one before. So yeah.
Barbara, did you have more to add?
Hello.
To your question?
I asked that question. Would it be possible to get back to me on that answer for the judges?
Yeah. If Rebecca gets back to me, I have your email, Barbara. I will try and get back to you.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question with many states are highly gerrymandered.
Mm-hmm.
How does ranked choice voting help you if you've got it so gerrymandered that it's basically impossible for the party that the gerrymandering is not does not favor to win.
Yeah. So that's a great consideration because gerrymandering is awful and I would like that to be gone, but that's an even harder thing to do away with than getting ranked choice voting. The good thing about ranked choice voting is what it does do is it dilutes the power of gerrymandered districts. And the reason it does that is because, again, going back to some of those first few slides in my presentation, the way the system is set up right now, the politicians, especially at the, the statewide and the congressional levels, they just know how we're going to vote, right? Because we aren't given many choices at all. So they give us this very narrow amount of choices. They say, we know what people are going to do, so we can draw our districts exactly like this to get the outcomes that we want. But when you introduce ranked choice voting into the mix, it all of a sudden gives the voter more choice. It makes it so more people are inclined to run. And so it makes it so you can start to shake that up some. It's not a guarantee that that will happen, but ranked choice voting gives the ability, which again starts to kind of take away that power from those really specifically drawn districts. Yeah, great question.
Do we have any other questions? We've had great questions. I think it shows that people are paying attention and that there's a lot of education yet to come. But do we have any more questions this evening? Well, a big thank you to Rebecca for really educating all of us on ranked choice voting, giving us a lot to think about in terms of our community and our state and even bigger. If you enjoyed this event and appreciate the community and civic work of the League of Women Voters of Naperville, I hope you'll consider joining us. Go to the join page of our website. We hold ideas forums most Wednesdays of the month. In November, we will hear from Kathy Clarkin, co-founder and executive director of Accelerate Climate Solutions and co-president of the Naperville Environment and Sustainability Task Force. Once again, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Good night.
Thank you.